Promoter Eddie Hearn, we've just left sunny LA and here we are, we're back again. The War Grounds, obviously, what was the 10-year anniversary from a special night for you with Kell Brook beating Shawn Porter. How does it feel to be back?
Yeah, this is one of my favourite arenas. I mean, holds about 7,000, open air, gets very hot here. But seen some great fights and great nights here over the years. Of course, Kell Brook beating Shawn Porter, just like wild, sort of coming here, no real clue what we were doing. My old man was here as well. Kell just came straight into the lines then. Dethroned Shawn Porter in probably one of the great British performances of all time. Scott Quigg came back here and missed weight and fought Oscar Valdez, busted his jaw, but gave a great effort as well. And you know, it's a brilliant place. And coming off the back of Riyadh season, of course, that was a huge event. Still a big event on Saturday, and it's a really good night of boxing. You know, sometimes you put a night of boxing together that might not have the kind of profile as the Riyadh season event, but when you look at the card and you start looking into the fights, it's going to be a great night of action.
Diego Pacheco, look, when you sign young fighters, you've talked about what you're looking for. You're looking for someone who can put bums on seats, someone who is exciting. But from 17 to 23, what have you enjoyed about the process that this young man has matured?
I think just seeing him grow as a person and as a fighter. You know, I remember, it's a bit like Ray Ford, you know, you meet these guys when they're 17, 18, sort of come in, and over the years you see them start establishing themselves and changing their life. You know, buying their first property. Of course, now he's you know, got married. He's got a young child as well. See him become a father, and just seeing him grow as a fighter and as a person. And that's probably one of the most enjoyable parts of the job, is to see people grow and change their life. And he's on the cusp now of doing something very special in the sport. You know, he's number one with a WBO, highly ranked with all the other governing bodies. He's going to get ordered to fight Canelo Alvarez at some point. Now, we're not there yet, but we're 2 or 3 fights away from having no one else to fight but Canelo Alvarez. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I'm very proud of him, and I love this fight against Sulecki because I know Sulecki well. You know, 2 defeats against Andre and Danny Jacobs, really tough. You know, can hang in there, but Diego's a big, sharp puncher, and Sulecki says he's going to take him to the trenches on Saturday night and drown him. I hope he can ask some questions, but I've got a feeling this kid's just too good.
He's got a bit of star quality, hasn't he, I think? And even hearing him speak, like we talked about that maturity, but when you watch the early interviews to now, that self-belief evidently grows.
Yeah, and Jose Benavidez has done a great job as well. You know, I think that he's really put himself into a position now, Diego, through hard work within the camp, through learning in those hard spars with David Benavidez and other top talent as well, Canelo Alvarez. He's ready, you know, and I feel like the job that we've done with Diego has been fantastic, you know, from a headlining, you know, in Mexico, then back at the YouTube Theatre in LA to the War Grounds here, but also the progression of opponents. It's really important when you're bringing a fighter through that you take the right steps at the right time. And if he goes through Sulecki in style, you start looking at Munguia and Mbili and Bazinian, and then once you go through those guys, who else is there? But, you know, I love Pacheco Munguia. I think it's a brilliant, brilliant fight, and you know, I'm excited to see just how far Diego can go.
Elsewhere on the card, you're a fan of a lot of fighters, but perhaps more than a lot at the moment, Sugar Nunez.
Yeah.
I feel like, though, the world still doesn't know who this guy is. How far away is he from everyone knowing his name?
The boxing world knows everything about him, but of course the wider world need to know. For me, Sugar Nunez is the next star of Mexican boxing. And the performance against Rakhimov was sensational. I mean, to go to Russia and fight someone like Rakhimov, it was if you haven't watched it, try and find it. It's an absolute brutal war. And Nunez is the kind of guy that like I know obviously it's Kakachi against Warrington and he's facing the winner, and you know, I love Josh and I don't really want to see those two fight anyway, but I would send Nunez into any fight. Like, he's the kind of guy that you really want him to be mandatory for a top-ranked fighter or for a Queensbury fighter. I don't really want him a mandatory for one of our fighters, because I know I'm turning up on that night and we're going to smash you to bits and we're going to have a load of fun doing it. So, you know, obviously I want to see Josh win, and you know, we'll see what happens with his career. And listen, Josh Warrington's a world-class fighter. Him against Nunez is just a brutal affair. But if it's not Josh Warrington, if it's someone else, or if it's another promotion, Sugar will go and he'll do the business. He's a dangerous man. And people talk about being a Mexican puncher. Yes, he is a Mexican puncher, but he's also got a very good boxing IQ. You know, he can really box. He has great footwork as well, and he punches really hard. And I just think mentality. I look at him. I look at the way he lives his life. Sometimes you deal with a fighter, maybe a Mexican fighter starts getting a bit of money. All of a sudden, their desire goes a little bit. I think this kid's really switched on. I think he's a special fighter.
US debut for Chev Clark, and he's in there with a character in FA Apoche, to say the least.
He's in there with a character, but he's in there with a real fighter. Apochi was a good amateur, beat Jai Opatara in the Commonwealth Games. He's got 2 defeats, but if you watch him back, not really. Split decision defeats that, I think he won both fights. And this is a massive, massive test for Chev. But I like Chev's composure. I love the fact that we can give our British, say, prospects, because he's kind of at world level already, the opportunity to come out here and fight internationally. Fighting in Los Angeles is such a massive opportunity for British fighters, and we've delivered that for Chev. He's been brilliant in his career so far, but this is a tough test. And I only feel that Chev's 2 or 3 fights away from fighting for a world title, because there isn't much opposition for him to face. Hopefully we can pull out one of those big domestic fights as well, and a real test for C4 on Saturday.
Would you fancy Chev against the big domestic names right now in Britain at cruiserweight?
100%. I think he beats Callum Smith. I think he beats Richard Riakporhe, but he's only had 9 fights now. So, the experience that he's gaining out here and in these kind of nights is going to put him in great position. Those fights, I know that they're tough fights. Chris is a great fighter. Riakporhe's a great fighter. They're tough fights for Chev, but I believe he comes through them. But these kind of nights and these kind of experiences will mean that when they come, he'll be more than ready. One
thing I do want to ask you, since we're stateside, I guess it makes sense. Boots Ennis.
Yeah.
Last time we spoke, you talked about reaching out to Norman's team and looking to make that fight. What is the latest update?
Do you know what? It's frustrating because you hear everything that Brian Norman Senior or his daddy's saying, and none of it really makes sense. This is a really simple situation. The first offer that was made to Brian Norman was nicely over $1 million. They said that they felt that, not insulting, but was nowhere near. We've made 2 more offers, $250,000 every time now, to levels that Brian Norman will never see. And it's like, we keep getting told we're close, then we go back and make another offer, and then we're told by his team that we're actually not that close. And I start to think, Brian Norman, do you want this fight, or are you clout chasing, or as the others might say over here, cap, or whatever it is.
Not sure that works, but
not
fine.
Sure it is either. But it's like, do you want to be great, Brian Norman? Not being funny. Who is Brian Norman? I know Brian Norman's a good fighter, but no one knows who Brian Norman is. We're giving you a bucket load of money and an opportunity for you to unify the division against, in my opinion, one of the top pound-for-pound fighters in the world. Now, you say Boots is overrated. You say he's not the bogeyman. Then why wouldn't you take this bucket load of money to prove that you're the best welterweight in the world? So let's just stop with the interviews online. We've gone back 3 times now with more money, to a point, with all due respect to Brian Norman, he shouldn't be making this kind of money. But we're ready and we're prepared to pay him it. And then we get told, oh, you're miles off. It's like, we just saw an interview with this guy saying we're right close. We've just gone back with another $250,000, and now you're telling us we're miles away. So I don't believe the bullshit of Brian Norman and the team. If you want the fight, you would have taken the fight. And now, we're in a situation where the IBF, which is absolutely ridiculous, has ordered Trudezian to fight. The rematch. Listen, the kid's a good fighter. Boots has already beaten him. The IBF have got to stop with this. They're ruining boxing by ordering fights that people really don't want to see, especially when he's already beaten him. So we may vacate the belt, and we may do something different, because Boots has got to prove to the world how great he is. We may fight Trudezian, and we might just get it out of the way. But Brian Norman has missed the boat, and now he's got to go and fight someone for peanuts that no one's ever heard of. Boots is all right. Boots is on a fortune. But Brian Norman had the chance to prove himself as a superstar, and they dropped the ball. And I hate all this stuff. The dad's going on, giving these interviews, and you're not even in the conversation. We've never had a conversation with a dad. Very frustrating. Brian Norman.
What could you do differently? You say about maybe vacating the belt and exploring other options.
We have to be in the right. Listen, we may take care of the mandatory again, but we didn't want to. We want to fight. Listen, we've made offers like Stanionis, well north of $1 million. Where's Stanionis going to see money like that? Who is Stanionis? These guys are it's laid on a plate for them. And the problem is with boxing, Brian Norman, Stanionis, Marius Barris, they know they can't beat Boots. And the dad will come out, Brian, yeah, we will. They will fucking prove it then. Excuse my language. It pisses me off because no one wants to really be great. Right? Brian Norman, who no one's ever heard of, has a chance to beat Jaron Ennis and become a superstar in the support and make a fortune on the way. But he talks about it, but he's not about it. And Stanionis, don't even get me started on Stanionis. That geezer piped up on Twitter. I mean, not being funny, when I made the offer to Stanionis, I nearly threw up in my caviar. And now, he don't want to know either. Barrios is fighting someone else, whatever. Look, Barrios is a good fighter. But these guys, they're not really about it. They're not. They talk about it. No one wants to roll the dice and try and be great. That's what it's about.
Is the Rolls Royce smelling like a fishmonger's now?
No, but it's like, it just pisses me off. All I do is read, and then people come back and they're like, oh, Eddie, people, tweet, DM, whatever. Oh, why aren't you going to make Brian, I bet your offer was like 300,000. It's like, I wish it was. It was well over 5 times over that, well over it. And yet he still don't want to fight. What's Brian Norman's biggest purse ever? 200 grand? Please.
Final question, because Colin from IFL here he's waiting. Look, he's doing his stretches, waiting to grab you here. We're going to see Shakur Stevenson in camp next week, but it seems that you've ducked the game of basketball that was highly touted. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not playing Shakur Stevenson at basketball because when I tried the darts trick with Terence, that was like the worst call in the world, and I thought Shakur, I know he's an amazing athlete, but I'm 6'5". On the basketball court, then I saw him playing in some celebrity tournament. He's unbelievable. So I'm not getting involved with anything with Shakur Stevenson. He's in camp. You guys are going to go and see him next week. I'll tell you something now. This is a very tough fight against Joe Cordina. I don't like the way people criticise the Cordina fight because Cordina was the best super featherweight in the world, right? He fought Kakachi, probably one fight too many at 130, got hit after the bell, never recovered. Look at the fights against Agawa, knockout of the year. Look at the fight against Rakimov, fight of the year. Tell me the opponents that Shakur Stevenson has beaten that are better than Joe Cordina. This is probably one of the toughest fights of Shakur's career so far. Up at 135 pound, and Joe has got the bit between his teeth for the bounce back. He's an underdog in the fight, but Shakur knows this is a proper test, and that'd be a great fight on a massive card in Riyadh season.
Top man, cheers.